Today I'm out near San Antonio, Texas with the all-new third generation Toyota Tundra. And this time when Toyota says all new, they mean all new. We have a new frame, a new body, new engines, new transmissions, and a completely new interior with new infotainment systems for 2022. If Toyota plays their cards right, we might soon be talking about the big four truck companies in America rather than just the big three plus Toyota. Toyota already sells about 3 times the number of trucks in the US that Nissan does, but about half what we see out of the combination of Ram and Jeep. That may change with this generation. Toyota is promising greater production capacity, and we're going to be getting an all-new Tacoma soon. The designers definitely played it safe with the 2 previous generation Tundras, but for this generation, they decided to make it much more expressive. So we have a bigger, bolder grille up front that honestly I think ties itself in better with the Toyota lineup than the previous generation Tundras. So the headlights, although they are unique and this grille section is definitely not found on any other Toyota model, it definitely has some styling cues like the dip right there around the Toyota logo and the way these daytime running lights and accent lights are integrated into the front bumper. We have full LED headlights standard in all models. If you get fog lights, they're integrated right there in that little section, which is an interesting touch. Be sure and let me know what you think about this design down there in the comments section below. I think the F-150 and the Ram pickup truck are a little bit more my style, but I like this look definitely more than what we find on the current generation Silverado. If you're a fan of aftermarket bumpers with winches or brush guards, anything along those lines, you should keep in mind that the Tundra has a standard radar adaptive cruise control sensor that's used for the cruise control system and the autonomous emergency braking system. It's located just below the Toyota logo right there in that area, just about where you might want to put a winch up front. So if you do plan on modifying the front of the vehicle, keep in mind the radar sensor might not function properly. And that's why there are a few pickup trucks out there that put the radar sensor behind the windshield, because if it's located there, it doesn't really matter what you do to the front end of the vehicle, the safety systems will still function. Moving around to the side, like model for like model this year versus last year, the Tundra gets a little bit longer, about 5 to 6 inches longer in every version. A lot of that has to do with the crash structure improvements up front, because even though we don't have a V8 engine available in the Tundra anymore, we have a pretty long hood up front. A lot of that has to do with crash regulations. They've also tweaked the body and bed combinations a little bit. You can still get this in a double cab form. You'll find that in the SR and SR5 trims of Tundra. You can get those with a 6.5 foot or an 8.1 foot bed in the back. The limited trim, which is what I spent most of my time in today, can be had with either the double cab or the bigger Crew Max cab, but if you get the double cab, you can't get the 8'1" bed in the back, you can only get the 6'5" bed. If you get the Crew Max cab, which is what I'm right next to here, then you have the choice of a 5.5 foot bed or a 6.5 foot bed in the rear. That's also a little bit of a change, and you'll find that in SR, SR5, Platinum, Limited, and 1794 trims. If you get the TRD Pro, then you get this cab and the shorter bed behind. All versions of the Tundra are longer than before, depending on which version you get. This could come in at 233.6 inches long, 245.6 inches long, and now 252.6 inches long. It's worth noting that there is no regular cab 2-door long bed version of this. Production volumes are just not high enough for Toyota to justify building that kind of Tundra. So all Tundras are going to be 4 doors, and only that base form with the double cab is going to have the availability of an 8.1 foot bed. Moving to the rear, we find a much more expressive tailgate than before, and this design kind of reminds me a little bit of modern Hyundais, with sort of the karate chop right here across the back with this line that runs the entire length of the tailgate. Down below, we have a lot of plastic inserts on the bumper, which kind of surprises me. A lot of truck shoppers out there want full metal bumpers, and here we have plastic sections on all the exposed bumper parts. There's a single exhaust tip over there on the driver's side, but not in the rear. It's actually on the side of the truck. We have a 2-inch receiver here, 4-pin and 7-pin wiring harness connections. An interesting touch is they put the backup lights right here in the middle of the bumper. The tailgate is a lightweight design with assist springs, so it opens softly right there rather than just clunking down, and it's really easy to close one-handed. We then have the option of a button right over here integrated into the taillight. You'll find this on limited and upper trims that releases the tailgate with a simple press of a button. Although you should know that at the launch event, they had one of these models connected to a trailer, and I accidentally walked through, said, "Oh, what's that?" Pressed the button, and it bopped the tailgate right onto the hitch. As we see with other models in the lineup, the Tundra comes with a ton of active driver assistance technology standard. We get forward collision warning, autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian detection, adaptive cruise control, lane departure warning, lane keeping assistance, roadside information, and auto brake hold standard on even the SR version. As always, there are a few features you can add onto the Tundra. You can get a 360-degree camera view, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic detection, and auto brake hold as well. Diving under the hood, I noticed two things right away. The first thing is that the radiator is really quite far away from the very front of the vehicle. That will likely help reduce the cost of repair in the event of a front-end collision. Now, there is a crash bumper located right there under the main portion of the front bumper where it has Tundra spelled out, but this entire upper end section is really just a plastic trim piece. The only major thing going on in this upper grille module are the active grille shutters that help improve aerodynamic performance. The next thing you'll notice is that all Tundras have a twin-turbo V6 engine under the hood. This is the only half-ton truck in America that will be sold without at least the option of a naturally aspirated V8 engine. That base twin-turbo V6 is a 3.5-liter unit. It produces 389 horsepower and a whopping 479 pound-feet of torque. It's mated to a 10-speed automatic transmission and your choice of rear-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. There's also going to be a hybrid model available in 2022. That's going to combine the exact same 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6 and basically the same 10-speed automatic transmission with a single electric motor. So even though this engine is distantly related at least to the 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6 that we find in the Lexus product line, and the 10-speed automatic transmission logically is also related to the Lexus 10-speed automatic, the hybrid system is very, very different than that rear-wheel drive Lexus hybrid. Conceptually, the hybrid system that we find in the Lexus LS is a combination of a 4-speed automatic transmission and basically the same kind of transmission that we find in a Prius. With this hybrid system, it's a regular 10-speed automatic transmission, and in that way, this is actually very similar to the engine lineup that we find in the F-150, because the F-150 is also available with a 3.5-liter twin-turbo 6 with a 10-speed automatic transmission, and its hybrid system operates on basically the same design principle as the available hybrid in this vehicle. I don't have any fuel economy numbers just yet for that upcoming hybrid model, but if you get the regular twin-turbo V6, Toyota says this should get 22 miles per gallon combined if you choose rear-wheel drive, 19 miles per gallon if you choose four-wheel drive. Max payload comes in at 1,940 pounds, but of course this will vary based on the version of the Tundra you get. The model that we're looking at right now has a max payload of 1,400 pounds according to its door sticker. Remember that payload includes the driver and everything that you put in the vehicle, including the tongue weight of your trailer, and it's going to vary based on the options that you get in your new pickup truck. Whether you get two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, the small cab, the big cab, the short bed, the medium bed, or the long bed, all of those things will affect your payload and your towing figures, as well as accessories. So the more loaded you get your pickup truck, like the 1794 edition, those are going to have the lower payload ratings. Towing should top out at around 1,200 pounds, again, when properly equipped. This model, Toyota does not have a special sticker for that, but this model likely comes in right around 10,500 pounds based on the options and, of course, the door sticker for payload. I've only been able to spend a few hours in the Tundra so far, but I found the front seats to be pretty comfortable. They're not as adjustable as some of the competition, at least in this limited trim. We have a two-way adjustable lumbar support, power driver seat. You will find a manual driver seat in the base models. And we have a manual tilt telescopic steering column with a large range of motion. You should know that the front passenger seat does not have the same range of motion as the driver's seat. But we do have a two-position memory over there on the driver's door, and these seats are both heated and ventilated in this trim. Bearing in mind that this is the CrewMax version of the Tundra, there is a ton of legroom in here. The front seat's comfortably adjusted for me at 6 feet tall. I have over a foot of legroom left right there. Headroom, however, is a little bit more limited than I thought it would be. I have about an inch of headroom left, so I could have wished for a slightly higher roofline. This one does have the large panoramic moonroof, however. If I move over to the middle seat, you'll definitely notice that limited headroom. Not a lot of room right there, even if I try and put my head back there. But if I scoot all the way over to the right side of the vehicle, I still have tons and tons of legroom, and certainly enough width back here to put child seats, booster seats, that sort of thing. The rear seats also tilt forward so that way you can access the top tether anchors. This is where they hide the subwoofer, and of course a storage area right there with the tire iron. Now let's go for a quick look around the interior. You can see that this model has the large panoramic moonroof that's available. It's a power shade design, and it goes to just about the rear seat passengers' heads, but it does cut down a little bit on rear passenger headroom. Driver and front passenger get height adjustable shoulder belts and height adjustable headrests. This interior looks like leather, but this is actually their imitation leather product. It has some really cool patterns on it. You can see right there in the perforated center of the seat, we have a pattern going on, and the pattern changes based on the version that you get. If you get the TRD off-road version, then it looks sort of like angular camo. These seats are both heated and ventilated, not too aggressive on the bolstering. Lots of soft touch materials going on the front doors. You can see right there, soft touch upper section, soft touch midsection. Toyota did warn us that all of these vehicles are early pre-production vehicles, but the plastics definitely seem more production intent on this interior than when I first saw the Tundra a number of months ago. Moving over to the dashboard, we have a strong horizontal line running across the dashboard. In this section, that trim continues across the driver's side. We have a large glove box below, but you'll notice no two-tiered glove compartment like we do find in some trucks. This is a very large and accommodating glove compartment, however. I was definitely able to fit a large tablet computer inside. Soft touch materials here, but harder plastics towards the top of the dashboard. In the middle of the dashboard, you'll notice the big thing here, and that is this absolutely enormous touchscreen infotainment system. As far as I know, this is the world's biggest implementation of Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. It uses the entire screen. It's definitely huge, even though the screen itself doesn't seem like it dominates the dashboard that much. It sticks up a little bit right there over the top. There's a storage area just above, but because this interior is so large, a 14-inch screen doesn't really seem too out of place. Now, the software behind this is entirely new for Toyota as well. We have function buttons over here on the left side. If you want to know more about this infotainment system, check out my separate video on that. Factory navigation is included with the big screen for a year. It's an online connected navigation system. So without the monthly subscription and without connectivity, you have no navigation. If you get the smaller 8-inch screen that's available in the Tundra, then this particular function is always going to be optional. It's $16 a month, but you can get it on any model. We have a multimedia interface here with Album Art, definitely nice and high resolution. The ability to connect 2 different Bluetooth phones with the vehicle, that's an interesting touch. Then we have vehicle settings and then system settings for that large screen. Below that, we have dual zone automatic climate control. That's something that we find in the limited trim. If you get the lower end trims, then you don't get the dual zone system. Heated and ventilated seats. Extra buttons down here. This has the reverse trailer assistance system, 360-degree camera system, and the optional adjustable height rear air suspension. This is not a 4-corner air suspension, it's just the rear. Moving over to this side, we have the start-stop button and the integrated trailer brake controller. We then have a button for the auto brake hold, electric parking brake, Qi wireless charging mat that is optional. Wireless CarPlay is, however, standard. That's an interesting twist. Pretty typical shifter right here. We then have the controls for the 4-wheel drive system, drive mode selector, and then a tow haul mode, 2 big cup holders there, and then a very large center console. We have a lot of different dividers here, so you can divide that section right there like that, use these 2 storage cubbies, their cup holders just behind that, and then if I press the buttons, which are right there in front, this center section opens to reveal a very large storage area, but interestingly enough, not enough room to put hanging file folders, which is something that we find in most American pickup trucks. 2 USB charge-only ports right there and some coin holders. Over on the driver's side, the instrument cluster changes depending on the trim level you get. If you get SR, SR5, or this limited trim, then we get a small 4.2-inch display right there between some analog gauges. If you get the limited hybrid, then we get a 12.3-inch full LCD cluster. I'm surprised that this limited trim didn't get the bigger LCD. Moving out from there, we have an all-new 4-spoke steering wheel design with perforated leather sections on the side, regular leather above. Lots of controls that are on the front of the steering wheel, no stalks or anything like that hanging on. On this side of the steering wheel, we have buttons that mainly deal with that multifunction LCD instrument cluster, along with the phone button, voice command button, volume up, down. And then on this side of the steering wheel, we have track forward, backward mode, and then the controls for the standard radar adaptive cruise control. The defining feature of the new Tundra is, of course, the twin-turbo V6 that is standard on every model. You just have the option of adding the hybrid system or not getting the hybrid system. Now, I'm driving the model here first without the hybrid system. If you want to check out my thoughts on the new hybrid, that's going to be a separate video where I take a deeper dive into that model. And you should know that the hybrid system is not going to be available at launch. That will be sometime later in calendar year 2022. If you want to get your hands on the new Tundra in 2021, it's going to only be the regular twin-turbo V6. 0 to 60 happened in this model in about 7.6 seconds. Remember that your 0 to 60 time is going to vary based on the options that you get, whether you get 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, the different cabs, the different beds, etc. This particular model is the Crew Max cab. It's the biggest cab with the shorter bed available in the back. Although acceleration times will vary based on the trim and the bed configuration that you get, there's not going to be as much variation as we find in the F-150 lineup, the Silverado, the Sierra, or the Ram trucks. And that's because we don't have as many different axle ratios, engines, transmissions, etc. to choose from. Quite logically, the lighter the Tundra, the shorter the stopping distance. So if you're taking a look at the absolute top-end trims like the TRD Pro, those are going to give you the longest stopping distances in the Tundra lineup thanks to the hybrid system, which is going to add nearly 600 pounds to the curb weight. Remember that the Tundra is not an all-aluminum construction vehicle like we find in the F-150, so the curb weight of this is going to be a little bit closer to the GMC Sierra, the Ram 1500, and the Chevy Silverado. The other thing you'll notice out on the road is the improvement in handling ability and ride quality. Handling is definitely improved over the previous generation Tundra, but honestly, most half-ton trucks are pretty similar in the United States. They all have very similar weight balances, big engine up front, empty bed in the rear, so if there's no weight in the rear will definitely feel a little bit light. But ride quality is really where the Tundra turns over a new leaf, and I would say this is now about the equal of the Ram 1500. With the Ram 1500, they moved to a coil spring suspension in the previous generation, and that made a huge difference. Toyota has done exactly the same thing in the Tundra. And then they added an optional adaptive variable suspension system. Those are adaptive dampers on all 4 corners and an available air suspension in the rear. Now, the air suspension is is a little bit different than the one that we find in the Ram 1500 because it's simply load leveling in the rear, and it allows the rear springs, the actual steel springs in the back, to be a little bit softer because they don't need to support all the weight. The airbags will support some of the weight, and that seriously improves ride quality, especially when you don't have anything in the rear. That is what this model that I'm driving has on it, the available rear air suspension. This does not have the adaptive suspension system, although the two can be combined with one another. Now, you can't get the adaptive suspension system without the rear air suspension. That is one thing to keep in mind. So if you choose the adaptive suspension option, it comes with the rear air suspension, but you can get the rear air suspension without the adaptive dampers. By enabling the rear springs to be a little bit softer and then supporting the load with the airbags, this suspension is much more compliant over broken pavement, especially in corners, where you will notice a big difference between this and the previous generation truck. Clearly, I'm not driving this at home, so I don't have any official sound measurement numbers, but the cabin does appear to be a little bit louder than the Ram 1500 or the GMC Sierra. The Ram 1500 is especially quiet in its current version. Keep in mind that right now I am driving the limited trim, so things may be a little bit different if you get the upper end trucks. But any way you slice it, this is going to be quieter than the average mainstream crossover because we have an isolated cabin. Remember, in a body-on-frame vehicle, the suspension, the engine, all of that, that's connected to the frame, and I'm riding in the body. And there's a decent amount of isolation between the frame and the body that really helps quiet the cabin out. As far as engine sound goes, there's definitely a throaty growl from the twin-turbo V6, but if you listen closely, you'll notice that not all the engine growl actually comes from the twin-turbo V6. A decent amount of it is actually played through the speakers in the cabin. And that's mainly because twin-turbo V6s don't sound terribly exciting, especially in a vehicle that has this much isolation between the engine and the body, so they have to play a soundtrack in here. And that's exactly what Ford does with their twin-turbo six-cylinder lineup as well. As far as fuel economy goes, I've been driving this mainly out on the highway, a mix of country highway like the one that I'm on here and interstate highway earlier with speeds around 70 miles an hour. The speed limit around here in Texas is around 70. I've been averaging 17.5 mpg. That's not as high as I would have liked to see, and it's definitely a little bit lower than some of the V8 competition or the twin-turbo six-cylinder engines that we find from Ford. If you get the four-wheel drive version of the Tundra, then highway fuel economy is a decent amount lower than the twin-turbo V6 from Ford. This particular model has an EPA rating of 19 miles per gallon combined. I'm getting just a hair below that, but this is an early pre-production model, so it's always possible that Toyota may be making some additional fuel economy tweaks soon. Bottom line out on the road, the new Tundra is definitely a big improvement over the previous generation truck. This twin-turbo six-cylinder engine has a lot of low-end torque and just a lot of torque, period. That, coupled with the 10-speed automatic transmission, definitely makes this better at towing, at hauling, and just regular driving out on the road. Now again, if you want to know more about the new hybrid model, be sure and check out that video if you haven't already done so. That one is going to focus mainly on the hybrid system, and I'm not going to talk as much about the truck's interior in that video. Video, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that the new Tundra is going to stick pretty close to the outgoing Tundra in terms of pricing. I suspect the SR5 trim is going to be the best value in the Tundra lineup. Clearly, we get the twin-turbo V6 engine standard, but we also get a decent number of the interior features that you saw in this model on that SR5 trim available. So you'll have to pay extra for those. Like the 14-inch color infotainment screen, that is available on the SR5 trim. It's the first trim that you can get that screen on. That's going to give you a longer trial of the connected services, but after about a year, you're going to have to pay for that going forward. It's $16 a month if you want to have that navigation system and the expanded voice functionality in that screen. Toyota has not given us complete details about the future packages for their connected infotainment system. They have said that depending on the model, there may or may not be a trial period for the connected services. If you get the big screen in a Lexus, it'll be 3 years of connected services included. If you get the big screen in a Toyota, it looks like it's going to be 12 months. And if you get the smaller screens, it may be a shorter trial period or no trial period at all. But with the new connected infotainment system, anybody can have access to those expanded functionalities if you pay the $16 a month. Next up is the limited trim. This is probably going to be the bulk of sales according to Toyota going forward, and it expands the feature set to things like 20-inch alloy wheels. We get the 14-inch infotainment system in there, dual zone climate control, power driver's seat, and heated and ventilated seats up front with heated seats in the rear. One weird omission on the limited trim, however, you don't get the big LCD instrument cluster. You just get the smaller 4-inch one that you saw on this interior. If you want the bigger screen, you can get it in the limited if you get the optional hybrid system, which is coming later in 2022. Rather unfortunately, they have not released any pricing details or fuel economy details on the upcoming hybrid. Just it will be available in 2022, and we know that it's going to bump power up to 437 horsepower. If you want the most off-road capable version of the Tundra, that's going to be the TRD Pro. It's based on the limited trim in terms of the feature content that we get on the inside. And then there's also a Platinum and the 1794 trim if you want the more luxurious formats. I think the 1794 is the best looking Tundra for this model year. Be sure and sound off down there in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about the new 2022 Tundra, especially the design of the Tundra and the engine lineup. The fact that for the first time we have a twin turbo engine under the hood of this Toyota pickup truck. And of course, as always, find me over at facebook.com, Instagram, all those other social places. Hit the subscribe and notify button if you haven't already done so, and I'll see everybody next week.